This is the Unstarving Musicians Podcast. I'm your host, Rapunzo. The podcast features conversations with me and indie music artists, musicians, and industry pros. It's all about helping other indie artists, musicians be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that, wait for it, empower us to do more of what we love, which is make music. Welcome back, or for the very first time. Hey, I want to mention something before we get rolling here. SaveOurStages.com. I got a message from my friend Gaga and her counterparts at Spotify. As if only, I should say. But yeah, SaveOurStages.com. It is an effort to help out all those venues, all those stages that were helping us out if we were playing live. And you can voice your concern to your legislators to save independent music venues at this site. It's SaveOurStages.com. You should check it out. I think it's a great cause. I submitted. I think you should too. I'll put a link in the show notes in case you don't remember it. You can find those at unstarvingmusician.com, of course. Hey, do you want to help this podcast? Would you like to help other independent musicians find this podcast? You can do so by subscribing on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast catching service. It helps a lot. Seriously. Hey, the podcast is made possible through the generosity of listeners just like you. One of the easiest ways to offer support is to join the Unstarving Musician community at unstarvingmusician.com. In doing so, you'll get tips and insights you can use in your music journey, not just from me and my years of experience as a gigging musician, but also tips and insights that come from the hundreds of other musicians I've talked to as part of the Unstarving Musician project and this podcast. And you'll get a free copy of the Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs ebook. It's all free, just for being part of the community. To learn more about the other ways of offering your support, please visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor. There's some important stuff there that can help me keep the podcast going for free. So I woke up at 4 a.m. the day I recorded this episode. Got to shop that day. In Panama, we're under this quarantine thing where we have alternating days of the week where we're allowed to go out for 2-hour windows and grocery shop and do a couple of other essential services related things. Most everything is shut down still since the damn plague came. I was a little loopy. Always makes me think of my mom when I say that her name was Loopy, but she wasn't. I'm not implying she was loopy, other than in name. She was actually pretty sharp. But so how do I feel today? Well, I'm recording this bit almost a week later. I'm rested, but in all honesty, I'm anxious. I was writing to subscribers just yesterday, to members of the community, that I'll be honest in sharing that it's been a rough couple of weeks for me, between recognizing that I may be slipping into a bad place where I don't necessarily want to interact with people in person anymore, to freaking out about the future. I got a little less sleep last week, but my sleep has gotten back to normal, so now I need only be consumed with the uncertainty of the future, which I'll admit is easier to do when you're well rested. So, you know what? Get your rest. So how do you feel? I really want to know. That's why I shared with you how I feel. I would love to know how you're feeling, how you're doing. It's a weird time, right? You can go to unstarvingmusician.com to send me a message right there from the homepage. I think you just scroll to the bottom. You can find all my contact info. The number there is good for texting. I need to put a WhatsApp on there. I know a lot of you guys use WhatsApp, at least some of you world travelers or maybe some expats listening. I don't know. Or you can go to unstarvingmusician.com/feedback. And that's a cool page on the website where you can just leave me a voicemail right there from your mobile device. You just click play and go. It's pretty cool. You can leave me a message there anytime. But yeah, seriously, let me know how you feel, how you're feeling. So Caleb Lovely is my guest. It's a great name. He's a really nice guy. Good-looking kid. He's talented, and he was really, really fun to talk to. Multi-instrumentalist, talented, great singer. I'll get to that in just a moment, though. Do you have your artist or band website in order? Are you happy with it? If not, I want you to check out Bandzoogle. It's the easiest all-in-one pro website platform for musicians and bands. Why do I care, and why should you care? Because two things that will help ensure you're in control of your music business and your fan-based community, super important, is a solid website and an email list. And Bandzoogle can help you with both of those things. What do you think podcasters and PR people, management, labels, venues, what do you think they look at? Sure, they look at your social presence, your social presence. It's important. But they know you're truly serious about your music and your business when you have a solid website. I kid you not. If you don't yet have your own website or you're not happy with the one you have, go to bandzoogle.com to start a 30-day free trial and use the promo code Robonzo to get 15% off your first year of any plan, any subscription. They start at just $8.29 a month. That's pretty cool. It's easy to use. You don't have to worry about plugins and security updates. And you're like, what? I don't even know what that is. Exactly. You don't have to worry about it. Bandzoogle takes care of that for you. I use it and I love it. You should check out robonzo.com. That's my artist website. I need to get in there and do some updates, but it looks pretty cool. See for yourself. Go to bandzoogle.com. Use the promo code Robonzo to start a free trial today. The promo code Robonzo, ROBONZO. So Caleb and I, Caleb Lovely, we started the conversation out by talking about his marriage, which led to relationships as an aspect to his music. It's a big thing in his music. He is he's a total studio geek, which was cool for me because I'm new in the world of recording. Got my little home studio going in the hole, as I call it now. I don't know, maybe that's what the studio will be called. I just call my workspace the hole because it's a little tragic, but, I get by. We're a little space restricted right now. I need a bigger place. I don't need one, but, I wish. I'll have one. It's no big deal. Yeah. So I asked him about some EQ tricks for drums because he's really into drums and, recording of drums. And we also talk about how he acquired all his gear, all his studio gear and all his musician gear at a bargain. I think that's something you want to listen to if you haven't done much of that, if you're paying full retail for everything, which is what I do most of the time. I've gotten a few bargains. This drum set I'm staring at in my workspace room studio was purchased at a bargain. I don't even have the whole thing here with me. I had a couple pieces. I have a drum sitting in Texas still, in Austin. I think it's made its way to Austin. I got to get that thing back. I think... the other thing we talk about what it means to him when he says that being an artist means doing it all. And I think this is really poignant. That's a good word. It's really poignant right now because I've been talking a lot about what music artists, independent music artists need to make it. And he really talks about his approach. It's a good story about how he got to be who and where he is. And I think he is on a good trajectory. He could break out at any moment. He's that kind of guy. Got a great voice. He calls me sir a lot during the interview, which I give him a little bit of a hard time for at the end, but I knew why he was doing it, not just because I'm older than him, okay? But he's got a new release called With Him Tonight, on which he wrote, he had a blast recording dobro, mandolin, banjo, and probably some other stuff too. The guy's crazy with the multiple instruments. All right, here's me and Caleb Lovely. Enjoy. You're in Nashville?
Yes, sir, I am. I'm about 15, 20 minutes south in Franklin, Tennessee. I was going to say thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. Exciting.
Of course, yeah. I was about to tell you I have a younger brother and his wife that live in Nashville. I don't know if they're actually, it's funny, I should know. No, they're in Nashville proper. Yeah, they are. So
okay, cool.
I was going to say, I think maybe he's in a suburb.
That's cool. It's a great city. I love the city a lot. I'm with the love of my life here. I used to live in Nashville proper until we got married and we moved a little further outside of the city. So technically a different county, but it takes me about 15 minutes to get downtown. So.
Oh, cool.
So it's not too shabby at all.
How long you guys been married?
Man, it'll be 3 years on March 31st coming up. So we just passed our 2 years.
Are you?
Notice I look forward to getting older. So I keep pushing the, instead of saying, oh, it's a little over 2 years. I'm like, oh, almost 3.
That's funny. Well, are you already asking yourself, where did the time go?
Oh my gosh. Yes. It's funny you say that. We have that conversation almost nightly. Like sometimes my wife will just look at me. Her name's Madison, and she'll just look at me and she says, complete strangers. She's like, I don't even know you. Or she'll just randomly say, I can't believe you're my husband. Like what happened? I feel like we were single and not knowing each other just yesterday. I'm like, yeah, you're right. It's crazy how everything's happened. It's beautiful and it's scary as heck, because you always dream about, what it's like to get older and to look back and think, oh man, I remember what I was doing 20 years ago. And for the longest time, I haven't been able to remember what I've done yesterday, but to look back and think about something that was even 10 years ago just blows my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, where's time going?
Yeah. And marriage will give you another sort of bookmarker in your life. I think you'll find as the years go by, you'll be able to remember with even more clarity what was happening.
Yes, I agree. It's funny because I look back at the people we were even 2 years ago or 3 years ago when we were dating, and we were just completely different people. So it's like the saying goes, change is the one thing you can't change is change.
That's right.
Heck, I don't even know if that's a saying, but I just kind of said it.
It's kind of like that.
It's kind of like that.
So
but yes, sir.
Speaking of relationships, you strike me as writing a lot about them. I know that, love is a big deal in your life. Am I pretty on that relationships are kind of the biggest driver for lyrics for you, or are you tapping into other areas as well?
Absolutely. I would 100% say that. Anyone that knows me knows that it's funny because as a creative and I'm a Cancer, I just had a birthday July 6th. And I say that because I feel like Cancers are very, very emotional individuals. Also, my wife is a Cancer. So we're either oil and water or water and water. Most of the time we're water and water. But yeah, I absolutely write about relationships. What is the hardest thing to do as a songwriter is to write about happiness. And I mean that because when you're happy, you're in this euphoric state that you don't really notice. Sorry, for me being someone who I think was naturally sad most of my life. I think now that I'm happy, and I say that, sorry, it's not even about being happy. It's now that I'm loved and I'm able to love and be loved in return. It's such a great state of mind and state of being that you just radiate. So it's sometimes hard to write about that because love is something that everyone wants and what everyone is after, and not a lot of people have. Does that make sense? So
yeah, absolutely.
It's very interesting. But yes, sir, I do write a lot about that. I used to write a lot about sad things, mommy and daddy issues, and that's something I'm still tapping into a lot, and something that I deal with. But writing about that stuff is a little bit harder now that I've dealt with it and that I've kind of moved past, the being angry or upset with how I was raised. Because, everyone is raised. And even the people that have great parents, they look back and they're like, I'm mad at my parents. I'm like, why? You had a great life. And they're like, yeah, I'm mad that I had a great life, I didn't struggle. So grass is always greener. But yes, absolutely.
Isn't that true? So it looks like you do a fair number of interviews. Do you get asked about your childhood a lot?
You know what? I don't, but I've realized that it was such a big part of me, and it's something that I used to hide, and it was something that I used to act like it never happened, or that I'm stronger than the cards that I was dealt. And then I realized that anytime, actually, I realized it is when I was playing writers rounds in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'd play the songs, the top country songs that I co-wrote with people around town, and was like, yeah, that's great. And then I would end with this song of mine. And I'd probably played almost every round because it was a bit therapeutic for me. But I have a song called I'll Be Damned. And it's titled that because my meemaw, who lives on the bayou in Gulf Coast, Mississippi, Ocean Springs to be exact, she loves Jesus and she loves people, but she curses like a sailor. And I tell you what, I hear that. I will never be able to erase the sound of her saying, "I'll be damned," just about everything. You know, when she's shocked, when she's upset, when she's happy, just it's always that saying. But yeah, I wrote that song about the relationship with my father, who was, he himself was raised very Southern Baptist, and you know, as a son, you don't really ever look at your parents and maybe how their life was. You just kind of judge them by how they raised you. You know, as your father, you know, I never looked at my dad as a person. I looked at him as, you know, my father, and what is he going to do for me, or what is he not going to do for me, etc. You know, as a provider. But when I got older, I realized that he was just a man doing the best that he could, you know, with his firstborn son.
Yeah.
And so I think when I started to get off track, but when I played that song, everyone in the room would stop, like not a peep. You couldn't even hear the clinking of a glass on the table. It was just absolutely silent. And so I realized that, and the people that would come up to me and say, "You have no idea how much that song affected me." You know, I was heavily abused as a kid, and it's something that I've never dealt with. I have realized, oh my gosh, you know, as great as the songs are that, you know, are about like when you're single and like, you know, hoping to meet the love of your life at that bar tonight, that there's something that we're not dealing with as humans, and that's the connections between our moms and dads, you know, and how it has affected us being raised. And so I do believe in that. And I think it's such a profound topic to speak about and to pour into. So I think you'll be expecting a lot more of that from me.
Yeah.
But not so much on the sad side.
Sure. You know, a couple things. It's interesting to me that the way you described looking at your father. I thought, wow, I never, you know, we obviously had different lives, but I'm like, I never thought that way. You know, had those thoughts about my dad, like, what's he going to do for me as a provider? Not consciously anyway, probably really did subconsciously. But the other thing I was going to say is that, that song must have a lot of emotion in it, both lyrically and I would imagine the way you perform it based on the reaction that you're getting.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Just a few of the lyrics. Damned if I do, damned if I do. Sorry, damned if I don't. Damned if I can, damned if I won't. Because I've been running scared most of my life. Seeking shelter from your love, but there's no place to hide. I'll be damned if you ever say you're sorry. Words I never learned from you. Never learned from you, Dad. So those are a little bit of insight of what it is. But for me, it wasn't just my father. I think my father was searching for grace and redemption and forgiveness in the church. I think that was a really big thing. You know, when I was going to church as a Southern Baptist boy, you know, we moved around a lot. My parents were in the military. They served in the Air Force. And so even though when my father got out of the Air Force, we still moved around like crazy. You know, my father was always chasing the corporate dime and chasing that ladder, climbing it. And so moving around from company to company, better jobs, this or that. So I think I lived in 12 states in the 17, almost 18 years that I lived with my family. So people always ask if, you know, when they find out that I moved so much, they ask, well, oh, were you a military kid? And I'm like, well, yeah, kind of. I think that
Sure.
Just kind of that aspect of the military just stuck with him. But I also think that's what's made me who I am as a musician, that I've moved around so much, you know.
Sure.
But this is the longest place that I've ever lived, in Nashville, and it's coming up on almost 5 years. So I'm thankful for that.
Oh, wow. And how long do you look past Nashville, or do you see it probably just as forever home, or at least for now? Do you think about it?
It's fun. It's funny you say that. My whole point of coming to Nashville, just a little bit of a backstory, is that I've been an artist. Heck, I'd say all my life. You know, I remember making demo records on a recording tape Fostex machine when I was 14 years old. But I think I started performing out when I was about 17, 18.
Wow.
My first gig was at a bar. I was going to school at West Virginia University in Morgantown, West Virginia, about an hour south of Pittsburgh. And there was this little bar called Fuel, and I played it on my birthday. It was my 19th birthday. I'm not sure that I was allowed to be there, but I played it anyway. And I was playing cover songs, you know, everything from Brown Eyed Girl to Your Body is a Wonderland. And I played for 4 hours. And don't you know, at
Wow.
the end of the night, the bartender came up and gave me a $20 bill, and they're like, "That's your pay for the night." I was like, "Yes, I made $20." So that was my first. I want to say that's my first gig story. But yeah, so went to school there, and ended up just continuing to grow and perform. And I started working for a church actually, and I was a worship leader from about 18 to 27, 28. So I did it for about 10 years, and that took me to three different churches, one in Pittsburgh, and then one in South Florida. And then I ended my stint as a worship leader at a large church in Texas, in Houston, called the Woodlands United Methodist Church. And that was a wonderful experience. But the problem with doing that was that I was always unfulfilled, because I was still doing the artist thing on the side, and I was touring and doing it. And you're hearing, "Oh man, you're great. You're awesome. But if you really want to make it, you need to move to Nashville, because if that's where you really need to be." And I was just hearing that so much that I thought, man, I should probably give it a shot. So I packed my things in January 2016 and moved my butt down here and never looked back.
Are you still actively involved in church and the Southern Baptist thing?
No, sir, I am not. Not for any reason of anger or resentment. I think I have found God in so many different aspects of my life. It's been incredible. If I'm being honest with you, I feel like I'm probably the closest I've ever been to who God is. I think it's a tricky subject to talk about, politics and religion, and I never push either on anyone. But
sure.
What I do know is that I just want to love God and love people. And I believe how to love God is to love people, and how I love people. So that is what I strive for every day, to wake up and just love as deeply as I can.
Yeah, well, it seems to be helping you in your music, so that's cool. Well, let's talk about your new release for a moment. Congratulations, by the way, on With Him Tonight.
Hey, thank you so much.
Yeah, it sounds great. I was reading some notes, and it looks like you recorded on that song, among other things, dobro, mandolin, and banjo. Is that right?
Yes, sir. It's funny. I forgot to put everything else that I did. I have a studio at my well, it's a fine line to talk about, because either people are going to hate you or think that it could have been done better, which both are the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's I obviously want the song to speak for itself. It often for me, it's not an ego or a pride thing. It's really whatever is best for the song. And if there's ever a moment where I can't get the job, I'm more than willing to have someone else. But I think I've become so self-sufficient just because of the lack of that. Nashville is very competitive. Everyone wants to work and everyone wants to do it, but everyone also finds their value in getting paid for their work. And while I do believe that, because a big part of my income and aspect of doing music for a living is me producing other artists' music, I do see the value in that. For me, I have built a studio the last 3 years. I was touring with a somewhat popular country band at the time, and on the weekends and during the week, I was just playing guitar for them in queues and singing BGVs. And during the week, I was producing other people's records, so I was able to take the money that I made during the week making records, and I just invested 100% back into building a studio that I could sufficiently make records with. I'm talking old gear. I'm talking old 1176s and old Telefunken mic preamps, and just really great speakers and great microphones and drum kits, electric guitar amps, everything that makes records. And a lot of those pieces that I found from making records over the years and going to different studios, and whatever the engineer or producer was using on my voice, or what I liked about this piece of gear or that. So I've kind of just pieced together a thing that has ended up working really well for me. And it's funny, because With Him Tonight is the first song that I've released, that I've recorded everything for me as an artist out of my studio in Franklin, Tennessee. So it's a really big deal to hear that song on the radio and to hear it being played and to get such great feedback from people, whether it's commenting on the drums or the dobro or the electric guitar solo. People are asking and they want to know the chain and they want to know this and that. But it's been really, really encouraging. But yes, sir, the only thing I did not play on that song was the drums, but I did engineer the drums. My buddy, Brett Killingsworth, he plays for Cassidy Pope and a couple other people in town. And he's actually, ironically, my neighbor. So he came over and he came over and like he usually does. And we had popped up and started laying down and dialing in some drum sounds, and the rest is history.
Well, I was about to start asking, and I laughed when you mentioned he's your neighbor because I was about to start asking, well, why didn't you just play the drums? And maybe it's not your instrument you're most confident on or whatever, but then I'm like, well, okay, you've got a great drummer and he's right next door to you. You probably want to ask him if he'd be willing to help out.
It's true. It's so funny. Brett is extremely, extremely talented, and he's also a producer, so he has that mindset. So it's always about the song. So what was really brilliant is that he came up with the idea to overdub and lay over the toms and the chorus that kind of give it that really big feel. And so I love it. But you know what I've also realized with playing drums, it's really easy to, as a producer, I have learned that, yes, you don't need a lot of gear to make records. Digital has come such a far way, especially with the Apollos and the digital preamps and emulations. It truly is spot on. But for me, to craft the song and the sound, I'm all about EQ and compression going into the box. And when I say the box, I mean going into your computer, hitting it right at the source. And so with me, I'm EQ and toms, snares, overheads, rooms, hall mics, kick in, kick out, snare top and bottom. I'm truly engineering all of it, making sure phase is correct. And that's the beautiful part about this song, is that there are no drum samples, no synth samples, nothing artificially or pre-made by someone else. Everything was engineered and played by me, which is I think is a huge feat for me as someone who comes from the songwriter and the artist side and having to rely on other people. I've really, really dialed in how to make great records and to get great drum sounds that don't need to be replaced and that are done right. It's not always 100%, but I feel like I'm getting pretty close.
What were your where did you get your best chops as far as EQ? Doing that aspect of the work. And I'm asking as someone who's very new to recording. And I was really happy to hear you say that. But I'm first and foremost a drummer. But I wrote I want to say my first song. It's not really the first one ever, but it's the first time I'm actually working to release a single. But in recording the drums, I thought, okay, I know that I want the source of this to be as great as it can be, and when I hand it to someone, they can. And I knew I had some challenges here. I don't have the highest end mics, on the market or anything, and my room's a challenge. And I was happy with it. But anyway, back to the question: where did you, where did your bass knowledge or inspiration for being, learning how to do the EQ come from?
You know what? So what I've done, first off, thank you for asking and congratulations. I think that's incredible. Anyone that loves to make music, I think, should be releasing it into the world, because you never know how it's going to impact people and how it's going to affect people in a positive way. So
it's a nice thing to think about.
That.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about, and I think that's what has helped me a lot, is just knowing that, hey, it doesn't matter who's listening. It's like I'm making this for me first and foremost. So I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of people always think that artists, they just want the money, or they just want the Porsche, and I don't want the money or the Porsche. I just want the alpacas. But that's a conversation here in a couple of minutes. Okay, sorry. All right, back to EQ. How did I learn? You know what? I learned by trial and error. So I've only probably been recording drums, I'd say, for about 2.5, maybe 3 years. I have this beautiful old 1969 Yamaha recording custom kit. It's actually before they were recording customs, and it's in black willow, so it basically looks like a Gretsch. I went to this shop called Nelson's Drum Shop in East Nashville, and I had 3 different drummer friends of mine. I actually went, this is how I did it to find a good kit, because I've never had my own drum kit. But now that I was in a studio, I was like, okay, I have to have my own drum kit, because I know a lot of guys bring their stuff in and there's always the argument, 20-inch kick, 22-inch kick, 24, maple, birch, whatever you want to do. And so I knew going in, okay, I just want a drum kit that's versatile and that just absolutely slaps. Like when I hear it, I'll know. So I went to the shop 3 different times with 3 different drummers, right? And we all looked at these different kits, and I had them sit down and play them. I didn't play them. I didn't need to play them because I thought, well, it's Nashville. I'm not going to necessarily need to play this. I'm always going to have someone else hit them. And the first day I went with my buddy, Tom Myers, plays for a band called Wild Child in town. There was this Yamaha kit. There was about 5 mid-60s Gretsch kits, a Rogers kit, and a Slingerland kit. And we put all of them down to the test and played them all. And I get, having different heads, how old they are and how they're tuned up, but you can kind of get a gist of the kit hitting it. Even a really poorly tuned drum, you're going to be able to tell the tone of kind of what it's going to be. And I tell you what, the first one that we pulled down was this Yamaha, this 1969, and it was a 20-inch kick, a 12, a 13, and a 16. So, you can just put the 13 as the rack and the 16 as the floor, and heck, throw the 12-inch in the closet if you want. That's what I do. But we played that kit, same snare, but the kick, it was just the voice of truth, my friend. It just hit me in all the right ways.
Yeah.
Like it just that thump, no nasty overtones. It had all Remo ambassadors all the way around, just one ply. And I've never really been a big coated fan on heads. I've always liked that dual ply clear coat sound. But I tell you what, we moved to the Gretsches, a couple Burgundy Mist and Sparkle this and that, Gretsch and all of it. And they all sounded good, but I'm like, man, something about that Yamaha. The next day I came back, went with another guy. First kit, we sat down and played this Yamaha, and it was my buddy Elton, and he was like, dang. I'm like, yeah, that sounds pretty good. And so the third guy, we came and did it, and all of them kind of were like, man, you're all great kits, but something about that Yamaha. And I wasn't saying anything, leaning towards it, but that next day after I went 3 times, I went and got that Yamaha drum kit. And I tell you what, it has been on every recording the last almost 3 years, and it is just the same, yet different almost every time. And I mean that. So what I love for drums is I use API. So I'm a big API fan. I just love the American punch of that sound. Neve is awesome and great. I can't afford those old 1073s that are about 10 grand a pop. But API, you just cannot beat it. Cappy makes great stuff. But, I have a couple 3124s. No, I probably have 10 channels of API pre and EQ. And the trick is on the drums is the EQ. It's always, you dial in that pre. And then for the EQ, if you have the ability to have all that, I have a EQ snare top. I don't EQ snare bottom or kick out, but I'll EQ kick in and snare top. And then the toms. The toms are the huge part, man. If you have like a parametric EQ, like 500 series EQ, like a 560, I'm almost always cutting pretty much 9 to 12 dB at like 240, like that 200, that muddy area. And then I'm usually boosting like 125 or, and then maybe like 2.5K to get that. But that's how you get those big toms, man. Just like boosting that bottom end. If they're tuned right and well and not have that weird overtone, cut out some of those honky low mids.
Yeah.
And then just give it a little bit. And you got Boom City in that punch. But you know what I love? I love the sound of early 2000s, like Capitol Records.
Sure.
Like, recordings, you know what I mean? I just love that sound. Like that's what I try for all the time. I do the same thing with snare though. I'm always boosting like with the pull tech, at 100, that 100, 125, 150 round to get that like low end thump of that snare, pretty much high passing everything below that. And then I'll cut out, that 300 to 400 in that snare just to give it get a little more clarity, and then boost that maybe 3K. It's all how I did it, how I learned to make those EQ moves. I would record the drums. I set up the drums and I did just pre's only, like mic into pre's. And the mics, I usually run like 414s on toms, sometimes Sennheiser 421s, but mostly 414s. I just feel like they have a rounder bottom end. And then I'll do Royers as ribbon mics for the overheads. And then I usually do a 57 on the snare top and bottom. Kick out is like a Yamaha NS10 speaker from the 80s. And then like an AKG D112 VEG. So that's basically like the close mic kit, that 8-channel kit. And so what I would do is I would just record preamps, right? And so then I'd go into my DAW, but then I would take the DAW and I would route everything back through my patch bay into EQ and compression for all of those channels. And so what I would do is I would solo each individual instrument, or like mic, so say I would take, my overheads, and then I would mess with EQ.
Work the crap out of them until they sounded like that was all you were going to get to work with.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, with all those bands on EQ, I'm like, okay, cool. I want to know what all of these bands do. So instead of being afraid of moving things, I would just move. I would move the fader all the way up and all the way down, and I would listen, and I would learn where it was hitting me in my ear. I'm like, okay, this is that sound, that frequency, that's a roundabout of that. And obviously they're fixed EQ points, and so it's not that, but you could do the same thing in your DAW. If you have, even if you're using Logic, you can just take any source and just take an EQ point and boost it way high and then way low. You'll find those resonant frequencies, and that's the beautiful thing about EQ, is that sometimes, that if you're just recording a guitar, like say a Telecaster, you're playing that Tele and you're just really digging into it with a Vox, and you're like, man, this is the tone and it sounds good, but like it's really harsh, like in that high, high chimey, picky, ice picky sound. You know what I'm talking about in guitars? Yeah. But just take an EQ and then you go and you boost it like all the way, and if you sweep that EQ and then you find where it like really hurts and you're like, oh dang, that's it. And then you just bring that down, and then you cut, to tape to 5 dB, instantly clears up that tone. So I think that's the biggest thing that I'm learning as a producer, is just EQing. Now, I will admit I am not a mix guy. I can get things close, and that's my demo-itis is so bad. I can't even tell you, because I'll make a demo of a song like I did yesterday. I wrote a new one and I sent it off to my managers, and they called me like, what the heck did you just do? This is a smash. What did you do? It's ready to go. I'm like, I don't know if it's ready to go. And they're like, well, but you know what? It's funny, because I've done this with him tonight. The demo was so strong, so strong, and I loved every part of it. And this was a demo that I had made probably 2 years back.
Wow.
And usually when I do demos, I'm not always miking up a drum kit. I'll usually program drums or use a sampler to kind of trigger drum samples to kind of get a feel of what we want. So the cool thing about with him tonight is that I had pretty much everything recorded, except I wanted to do live drums. Well, the beautiful part about that is that Brett came in and played the drums so well that everything lined up. I don't even think I might have recut the bass just to make sure it would all line up, but a lot of the other stuff just kind of fit so perfectly. So what I've also learned in the recording process is that if you don't have time to do it right the first time, you absolutely don't have time to do it right the second time. So whenever I'm making demos, I'm trying to get it as close to how I want it to sound and how I think it's gonna be right off of the bat. And so because I've realized that going back and revisiting old songs because usually when you're writing songs, I've written songs, and this song is for me, especially moving to Nashville and being a songwriter, you're always writing for this proverbial, like, oh, maybe someone will cut my song one day. You never really think that, but it's been a different change for me, thinking like, all right, yeah, this is going to be my song. So whenever you do in production, you kind of like don't want to scare anyone too much. But with him tonight, we absolutely did, especially with the drums, took some chances and kind of did some stuff that you don't really hear in Nashville. So I'm super proud of that. But long-winded answer, but yes.
It'll be fun. It'll be fun to go back and listen to it. And you know what? You might find this a little interesting, but when you mentioned the playing, like, turning something all the way up and all the way down just to see what's in there. I hadn't thought of that yet, because I am really new to it, but it's an approach that I used with photography to a degree back in the SLR days. So the f-stop, if you know anything about photography, it's just kind of a way to figure out what kind of light you're giving the given your photograph, and I would do exactly that rather than, because they teach you based on whether you're in natural light or some specific type of indoor light that this is the f-stop range that you want to use. But I found that if I just went all the way in both directions, I could very, very easily find where the sweet spot was. Because of a meter is a lot simpler than what you were describing.
Very cool.
Yeah, but the principle's very much the same. So yeah, I'll have to. I have tried that to an extent, but with very conservatively, but like I was doing it early this morning for a track I'm working on for a friend, and I thought, well, I can always undo that stuff as long as I pay attention to what I'm doing and when I'm doing it in the DAW. So yeah.
Yes, exactly, and that is the pro about doing things in the box. Everything can be changed and everything can be saved, and you can always revisit it. Yeah. What I have learned is that, especially with drums, get it right at the source. And it doesn't matter if you have all of the gear or if you have none of the gear, because you could be running your snare drum through an 1176 and an old Yuri LA3A Pultec this with a Neve 1073. And if that drum is tuned poorly, there is nothing that is going to be able to save that. There's just no box, no nothing.
Exactly.
That's going to save it.
I'm using some pretty mid-range mics and straight into an audio interface to the DAW. And that's the one thing I know as a longtime drummer is like, okay, I've got to tune the kit as best I can. I gotta sound the room as best I can. And the mics are the best mics I have are the ones that are in here in the room with me. So I knew if I at least started with that, I have a chance of getting some good recordings. And so far it's been nice. So, well, this is a lot of what you were describing completely out of my realm of experience, but I think I'll have to make sure to let my friends who record know specifically about this part of our conversation so they can check out some of the things that you're doing. It will definitely be of interest to some people.
Oh, yes, sir.
I want to ask you, actually, let me talk about a quote that I pulled from, and hopefully you'll remember the context because I just pulled this one tiny piece. But you did an interview, I think it was recent, with Music Trails, talking about artists that influence your music. And there's this one thing you said that is pretty meaningful in my world right now, because I wrote some things that I think are relevant, which I was lucky and I got to write an article for Forbes.com. And anyway,
cool.
You said,
congratulations.
Thank you. You said, in my mind, being an artist requires nothing less than doing it all. What did you mean by that?
Brilliant. That's incredible. So because I need to stress this a lot, because there have been many, many moments in my very short career. It's funny because, the things that are happening and that will continue to happen, it's all gravy now. And what I mean by that is that, you putting in, I'm well over a decade of the hustle and the grind, and not even necessarily, getting out there and touring and doing that thing, but the constant hustle and grind in your mind of showing up every day for your craft, and I'm not necessarily sitting down and practicing, because I need to tell you that I don't sit down and practice songwriting. It's something that I've never done. I didn't go to school for it. I didn't take classes for it. It is something that very much comes naturally to me, and I'm very thankful for that. But what I do show up every day doing is constantly putting it at the forefront of my mind and thinking, what can I do today to continue to grow as a person? Because that's where it all starts. I think that you could be the most talented person in the world, but if you're singing about something that I totally see through, it's not gonna mean anything to me. And so with that being said, I need to show up for myself before I can show up for anyone else. And so whether that's sitting down with a guitar, whether that's singing in the shower, whether that's spending a little more extra time in the shower, thinking about, what I'm going to do in the day, musically speaking, whether that's what I'm going to listen to, what I'm going to subject my mind to, what I'm going to talk about, even conversations with my wife, about getting older, or, the ungodly expectations that I have for people, even though they've let me down in the past, But with coming to Nashville, I'll tell you a story. When I moved here, I had saved up every dime that I had, moving from Texas, and even much so that I'll admit that I was kind of a guitar gear hoarder. And what I mean by that is that I always I always joke with my wife that I'm consulting my friend Craig because I love Craigslist. I don't know if I'm secretly 50 years old, but man, I tell you, Craig and I go way back to when I was about 18. And I tell you what, I have found almost everything that I own. If I'm talking about my 1967 Telly or my, 1964 Strat or 64 Tremolux or any name it, my 66 335. I've got to keep the years right. I have a ton of vintage guitars, and I did not pay vintage guitar prices because of my friend Craig and because of where I live, just randomly. And the guitar stories I have that I could tell you are out of this world. And it's just truly a testament to that. I'm exactly where I need to be and doing exactly what I need to be doing. But with that being said, I do have some gear regret stories, and I did sell a lot of things that I wish that I didn't in order to move to Nashville, because what I wanted to do, my plan was to move to Nashville and to be able to write and to connect with people and to not be strapped for cash, because I am naturally a worrier. I'll admit it all day. Naturally worry and be like, oh, well, what am I going to do about this? What am I going to do about that? So try to keep my overhead low. But when I moved here to town, I made a record with a couple friends that I had met through some acquaintances. And we were making demos of actually some pop country songs that I was writing. And I was kind of going that direction, but I have this kind of odd falsetto for this oddly strong falsetto for a church-raised kid. And I have to tell you that I kind of wanted to do the pop thing. So I was writing pop music, like pretty kind of polarizing pop. I would say it'd be like Justin Timberlake singing Gnarls Barkley songs. And they're fantastic songs, but I wasn't playing guitar on them. I was very much programming and playing Roland Junos and, programming all the drums with these friends. And I made this record with them, and we did the record, but it wasn't getting mixed to how I kind of thought that it should be mixed. Like, it just wasn't hitting. All the sounds were there, but it just wasn't what I envisioned in my mind. And so when you're having talks about creativity and when you're judging art within relationships, it gets very, very tricky. And so with that being said, there was a little bit of ego issues. And though I was paying for the project, I decided that I wanted to try and outsource the mixing. And that wasn't very well received, unfortunately. And so it kind of I want to say hurt the relationship a little bit, almost to the point where, we weren't really working together to continue to create and show up and write the songs that we were doing in this season of life. It was probably like my first 8 to 10 months in Nashville. And so after that, I was absolutely devastated. If I'm being honest with you, I thought, I don't know, because even though I was playing the instruments, I wasn't engineering, I wasn't recording, I wasn't doing the sweet reverses or the cool production tricks. I didn't have that knowledge. I didn't know the Pro Tools shortcuts. I didn't know this or that. And so I was devastated because I thought, I am not going to be able to continue to do music in Nashville because I don't know how. Let's just leave it at that. Yeah. I don't know how. But you know what? It's the same thing that everyone says. I don't know how. Well, why can't you do it? I don't know how. Well, I woke up one day and I decided that I wasn't going to let that happen anymore. So I actually ended up going to Guitar Center and buying my first pair of monitors. And I got a pair of Adam A7Xs, and I had bought Logic Pro because that was the move here in Nashville. Everyone was using Logic, and while Pro Tools was still the studio standard, everyone was using Logic.
Is that still the case today, by the way?
It's funny you say that. I am making all of my records in Logic, but so like with him tonight, all in Logic. But I have to tell you that I don't really think it matters because most of my sounds are out of the box. Like if you were to if we were to Zoom call and I'd share my screen with the session of With Him Tonight, you would see that there are no plugins on my drums. You'll see that all of the drums go to a drum bus that have like maybe a gain, like for gain staging plugin, and maybe an API 2000 like bus compressor. But you'll see that that's what, and then a drum a parallel drum, for compression. And I'll usually use a pair of distressors for that. But you'll see that none of that is in. So I'm getting everything out of the box first. So for me, it's just a preference in using what is user friendly for me. And I feel like Logic is very much the Apple iPhone of DAWs. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Pro Tools is amazing. I will admit, I do think Pro Tools sounds better, if you will. But most of the guys who are mixing my stuff are using Pro Tools. But with that being said, with him tonight was actually mixed in Logic. So it was my session, and Brett Killingsworth, who also played the drums on that song, actually ended up taking the session and mixing it at his place, and we bounced back and forth. So really, I could make records with just Brett and I, which is brilliant. And I love that. You find your little team and then you just do it. It's very much the little engine that could. But that's what I mean about doing it all. To me, and you know what? Maybe this is something that I do need to work on as a person, but I know that no one has given the time of day to an artist that I see in town who is just a songwriter, or is like, oh yeah, I write these songs, or like it's a really talented vocalist, but they always need someone or need something. And what I have dedicated this season of my life to is becoming self-sufficient, but not because I don't want to work with other people, because I do want to work with other people. I want to work with the people who see the value and see this and see and understand and know the vision and think, hey, I want to be a part of what this guy is doing. This sounds great. I can make it better. Let's make it better. I'm all for collaboration and making it the best that it can be. I could literally not play a single instrument on the next single that we're releasing and just sing on it. And if it was better than the demo that I had, I'm 100% for it. So with me, I don't see how, for me, and I realize that everyone's story is completely different, especially with artists and what it takes. But I've known that me being a married man who has to take care of a family and to my budget with making things happen as an artist it has to be so specifically thought out. So the most that I can do in-house, the better. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think, so I think for me, I see the artists like Ryan Tedder, who Tedder has his team and he does his thing, but the dude is a monster songwriter, like monster, incredible piano player, like Beethoven level piano player. But he gets the engineering side and the producing side and the feel. And so that is what I strive to do in music. Not saying that I want to be Tedder, but I want to be me, but also know what I bring to the table, but also exercise all of the different parts that it takes to create feeling, to create emotion. Yeah. That's what I think. That's what I think it means to be all. And that's why anything less than that for me is unacceptable for me. That's what I meant by that.
Yeah, that's good. It's a good outlook. And then I guess, the other part of you trying to make sure you can do everything does involve some team, I see. But that I wanted to ask you specifically about, so I'm going to go ahead and ask you now. But how did you get involved with HowlAround Entertainment Group, and talk to me a little bit about what they do for you?
HowlAround Entertainment Group is a collection of wonderful, wonderful people. I met Noah and Liam. Ironically, so I used to tour with a country band, and we were playing Wilson Creek Winery in Temecula, California. Mm-hmm. And I met this guy that was working there in the crew. I think he was actually running the show, and he came up to me and he asked me, "Hey, are these amps okay for you to play today?" And the way he asked me, I thought, one, you shouldn't be asking me if these amps are okay, because it just is what it is. But they were very nice amps. And I looked at him and I was like, yes, these are great amps. Thank you so much. He's like, I saw your rider, but we didn't have those, but I knew this was going to be the next best thing. And he's like, but I personally modded these amps, and I think they sound really great. And then we started talking, and his name was Andrew Millsap. And I tell you what, I don't know what it was. I know what it was. It was absolutely a God thing. That dude and I were destined to be friends because we have kept in touch. And that was over 2.5 years ago. And every time I go out to LA, he's either picking me up from the airport or offering me a place to crash or feeding me tacos or geeking out on gear. And he has a studio out there in LA, and he and I have just become such great friends. And he was actually, one of his gigs was he was like head of like the road crew for El King. And so I met Liam and Noah because they were working with El King at the time. And I met Liam at Dolly Parton's rehearsal place over in West Nashville. And Liam and I just hit it off. Like, he is this wonderful, kind Aussie that is just loves life and loves people. And I tell you what, man, he and I just absolutely hit it off. And we were friends for probably, I want to say, close to a year. And, you know, when you come into town, you know, we'd all get together and hang out. And that's how I met Noah. And Noah and Liam are just best friends, and they are two peas in a pod. I tell you what, I could not be more grateful for two individuals that absolutely see the vision and are just 100% on board with making it happen. And that's exactly what they do. They've done more for me than I could ever do for myself in a decade. And that's just gospel. So they're wonderful, wonderful people, but they're making everything happen. I mean, they're just, they carry a large staff, and I love that.
And how about IF Publicity?
Oh my gosh, Amelia has done so much for me, even in this single. I tell you what, when we decided to work with her, within 24 hours, the amount of opportunity that she unlocked just in a mere 24 hours was again more than I could have done in a decade. And truth be told, is more than what I've done in a decade. So I'm extremely, extremely grateful for them. They've just been nothing but supportive and just like, hey, let's go. So.
And how did you get hooked up with them?
It's amazing. I got hooked up with them because they reached out via Instagram.
Oh, nice.
And they reached out, and they were, wasn't like, hey, you should work for us. It was like, they were replying to my Alpaca posts, or they were replying to pictures of me and my wife, or like, you know, just having normal everyday human interaction and conversation. And then like coming up and saying, hey, you know, I think I could help you with this. And that's the beautiful thing. You know, so many people come at situations or when they're looking for work or this or that, and they're always like, hey, you should hire me. And like, for me, it's always like, hey, I see you have this problem. I think I can help you with the solution.
Yeah,
that is what that's what gets me every time, because, you know, the money, that stuff comes. That stuff, it's fluid. It comes and it goes, you know, but the relationships are where it's at for me.
Yeah, especially in music, it comes and goes, right?
Yes,
rando question here. Your YouTube channel, which looks pretty good, by the way, you have a background image, like I forget what we call it, you know, the header image of your channel. It's like some sort of diagram of a bird. What's the story with that?
That is a drawing. That is actually a tattoo that I have on my right arm. It takes my entire front right arm. And it was a record that I put out in 2014. And it was called True Feathers. And I did it with a guy named Jonathan Clark down in South Florida. Actually, I did it with a guy named Danny Locatore. And they were part of this band called Twin Forks, which is Chris Caraba's project outside of Dashboard, like his Americana project. And so I was able to meet Caraba and all of those dudes down in Florida when I was there. I truly believe that's why I was meant to go there. But I did this awesome EP with them. And the EP I wrote when I was living in Florida, and it was just the beginning of me discovering myself. So the cool thing about the bird, if you're looking at it, it's kind of like a plastic surgery, or like you know, getting work done on your outside. So if you look at the right side of it, you see the feathers and you see what everyone sees on the outside. But then on the left side, all you see is the bones. And that's kind of like in the hollowness of it. So what I used to say is that the right side is what people see as me. But the left side is how I actually feel. And then the red lines were the incision marks or the marks for prepping to what I want to change about myself. And not necessarily change about myself for others, but to change for me.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Glad I asked. Yeah, I'll have to.
Yes, sir.
Good story there. Your live streams, by the way, I was checking one out on YouTube. One of the best I've seen. God bless your studio skills and passions. You've got a great looking studio, and you obviously invested in all the things to help you make a good sounding and good looking live stream. So I will recommend to everyone to check those out, and we'll check out a few more of them myself. It was really cool. Okay,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You are welcome. Well deserved. So it looks like Instagram is your primary home, right? Online?
Yes, sir. I would think so, and I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's just because the app's on my front screen, or if that's the move, or I don't know, just because it's been the move.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. That probably seems what I frequent the most. Yes, sir.
Or when I have publicity, Amelia or whoever's going to make the move for a website decides they're going to put one up for you. But so you're
exactly.
So you're Caleb Lovely on Instagram. I'll have a link to that in the show notes and some other stuff that we talked about. And I, by the way, have to props to Amelia and her team there. They've been great friends to me too, and the podcast. They've brought people like you to my attention, and several others, and so they're great. I'm glad to hear that.
Wonderful people.
You think so highly of
Wonderful.
So, well, hey, Caleb.
Oh yes, sir, I do.
Yeah, Caleb. Thanks for spending time with me today. I really appreciate it. And next time we talk, you don't have to call me sir ever, unless it's just a bad habit.
It absolutely is. Let's just say it was beat into me as a kid. I call my wife yes ma'am, and she's younger than me, so it's just it is absolutely a habit. So
I forgot to ask you, how old are you now?
I just turned 32.
Okay.
Don't tell anyone though.
Nah, you're a young guy. Well, I thought you were like I saw some of your recent stuff and I thought, oh, he's pretty young, and and you are. But I was thinking like super young, and I'm looking at just reading over some notes today, and I'm like, oh wow, you've been at this for a while. So, congratulations for all the hard work. I love the
overnight success.
Exactly. I love the attitude that you have toward it all. I love that you set yourself up for success in this weird time that we're in, and look forward to following what you're doing and sharing our conversation with others. And I will be in touch on that note.
Incredible. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you for asking great questions and stimulating great conversation. I appreciate it thoroughly.
Cool, man. Well, you know where to find me. Thanks a lot again to yourself, and we'll talk again soon. Hey there, thanks again for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. If you have feedback or comments, suggestions, questions about the podcast, my guests, me, whatever, visit unstarvingmusician.com/feedback. You can leave me a quick message right there from your mobile device, right there on that page. Or you can just go to unstarvingmusician.com and find all my other contact infos and shoot me a message. I'd love to hear from you. Find links for just about everything talked about in the episode you heard in the show notes at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. And thank you again for listening and sharing with your musician friends and fellow indie music fans. I love it. I love you. Peace, gratitude, and a whole lot of love.